was actually pouring rain in some parts, but it's actually okay here. Hopefully it doesn't start here anyways. And what's going on today? Okay, this was kind of interesting as this relates to here in terms of my channel and creating content, which was really weird, which I thought it would be an interesting case study of sort too, in terms of things like censorship and moderation when it comes to YouTube videos and all that. So as it would appear now, it seems like I was censored by the platform. So what happened? Apparently I got this notification that the platform took down one of my videos because it violated their community guidelines. Specifically, it says it was due to something like misinformation. I was like, hey, what's going on here? So usually with these types of topics, the first thing that comes up if you search for example, it'll be things like health related issues. It has been no secret, for example, in terms of YouTube not wanting certain topics to be talked about. And if they do see those types of videos, they would, for example, take down videos, issue strikes and so forth. So with that in mind, a lot of people just don't talk about it on the platform. So I was wondering, did I talk about any medical stuff recently? I know there was, for example, that recent news here in terms of the bird flu in BC actually, which was a big deal. But as I looked into it in my dashboard, apparently it was a video, if you guys remember, where I talked about how China sanctions Skydio and their battery production. So there's nothing too crazy in that one. If you guys remember too, I mean, it's my usual stuff. I just talk about what happened in a day in terms of what I read in the news and all that. And at the same time, that was Halloween, so I showed some events during the day, like fireworks and all that. And just to ring a bell for some of you too, that was also the video where you requested that you wanted to see the squirrel with a thermal camera. So yeah, in my opinion, it's like, hey, what's going on here? So they actually tell you specifically, for example, what part of the video violates their, I guess, community guidelines. And look at this. This is literally what they said violates their, quote, misinformation policy. It says here at 6:49 of the video, content that may pose serious risk of egregious harm by falsely claiming that footage from a past event is from a current event isn't allowed on YouTube. Are you kidding me? A video of a bird? What does this have to do, for example, with anything? Like, what are you trying to claim here? That this bird isn't real? It's AI generated, for example? Or is it some robot, for example, where it looked okay? The topic, for example, that he talked about was about China going after a company in the US. So, hey, this is misinformation in terms of this bird isn't located in China or the US. Like, how would you explain this? It makes absolutely no sense, correct? So I did try to read their policy further, so to speak, and it links to this saying misattributed content. It says content inaccurately presented as documenting human rights abuse in a specific location that is actually content from another location or event. You tell me, how does this make sense with nature-related video? And it goes on saying, content showing a military crackdown on protesters with false claims that the content is from a current event when the footage is actually several years old. So how does this make sense in your mind? I interpret this, for example, with the way this is written is, this policy is meant for, let's just say, as they mentioned, there is some kind of protest in the area here right now. People with signs and so forth. And somebody, for example, wanted to make it sound more sensational, maybe for clicks or something like that. And so what they do is they take a clip from a completely different time, area, and so forth. And they're like, hey, look at these two guys fighting, for example, with each other. Like, it's completely out of context, but they just did it, for example, to try to add drama. Like, I would imagine that's what this is meant for. There is absolutely nothing like that in terms of content in this video, especially with what they marked here. A bird? Seriously? What does this have to do with anything? How do you explain this? I even tried to contact them directly, but unfortunately, I'm not big enough in terms of, like, for example, having millions of subscribers and so forth, so I don't have access to a personal, let's just say, account manager. It's very general in terms of the people you talk to, and they couldn't even tell me specifically, what the heck is wrong with this? The only other thing I could think of in terms of this situation is, it's either one, it's an AI bot, for example, or something automated that just flagged this for some reason. I don't know. For example, like I mentioned, maybe it's because there's a bird flu topic recently, so this AI is going around going, okay, anything with a bird, for example, start flagging it and so forth, depending on like what types of combination you have in the video. But then that would be bad too, because they allege this was human reviewed and they verified, okay, yeah, this violates community guidelines in this way in terms of misinformation. The second thing I could think of, it might be a bit more controversial, but I wouldn't doubt it. It's somebody, for example, that doesn't like the content of the video in general. It could be, for example, let's just say because the topic is about China sanctioning a US company, Skydio, maybe somebody takes one side or the other behind the scenes. They're like, oh, I don't like, for example, this topic specifically in that way, so I will take it down and use this as a technical excuse. Now you may ask, for example, okay, if that is the case, then why would they choose a bird? Because if that is true anyways, like someone that's biased or prejudiced and they want to, let's just say, silence someone, just putting the timestamp on the exact part, for example, like when I talked about, for example, those sanctions, that would make it too obvious. So you could clearly say, for example, okay, it was this specific topic for some reason, the person is, I don't know, biased or prejudiced about it. And the third one, which would be more straightforward, is they think this is just completely fake. In terms of me, for example, filming this nature footage of a bird, like, well, again, what do you think? This is AI generated, for example? So with that, you say, okay, it violates community guidelines. I mean, I can rule that out right away in terms of having all the original footage and stuff that I keep all the time in terms of what I captured for the day. I mean, what is the claim there? Although that would make no sense too. Let's just say that is the case where they assume it's completely fake, like this bird and nature video and so forth. How does it pose a serious risk? Assuming that is true, for example, like you think this is fake, that even makes no sense. So the only logical thing I can think of is this is being used as a technical excuse for some reason to take down the video. That's all I can think of. Can you think of something like why this would make sense in any way based on what they wrote here? Now I know there's a lot of topics, for example, when you type it in, you can even search it, people getting censored, for example, randomly. I think the best example I had, which seems completely random regardless of the fact that they say it's a human reviewer that reviewed it. I remember there was a video that was so old. Do you guys remember, for example, the time when I was trying to search for a dentist to pull out my wisdom tooth, for example? Well, there was a video of that where the day was literally, if you guys know, me walking around, for example, in a park talking about topics like that. There's absolutely nothing, let's just say, violent about it or anything like that. But for some reason, it got age restricted. I'm like, what in the world? And it tells you in the message, this was human reviewed and verified. So for that, for example, I appealed it and I was able to write in, for example, my comments on why I thought it was an error. I even said like, what? There's absolutely nothing here that is, for example, adult oriented. How is a guy walking around talking about things, for example, like finding a dentist for a wisdom tooth removal constitute as 18 plus, for example? And then with that, they actually removed basically the restriction, which is good, but that shows me, for example, there was probably some kind of automation involved. Now that actually brings up another point too, because during that time when there is a dispute, for example, like you can appeal it, they actually give you a field to write in your comment on why you think this is wrong. Whereas with this one, there was actually no option for you to do that. You could just click, for example, okay, I appeal it, and it automatically goes to someone. And sure enough, this thing got rejected within literally like a couple of seconds or a minute, which makes me assume there was no one actually reviewing this manually. Even when talking to the YouTube support, for example, the guys even say, what, there's no option for me, for example, to like address it afterwards. So it makes me wonder, what is going on? There's something wrong here, correct? So what would you say? Like, what do you think is going on? Unfortunately, in this case, I don't think I can do much more about it. I'm too small, for example. There's not going to be enough attention to this, even though I think I have a really good example here of, to me, it seems like somebody is just trying to find an excuse to take it down, because come on, a bird video here is, quote, misinformation policy and all that, pose serious risk. I mean, somebody got lazy, in my opinion, in terms of just trying to find any excuse to try to take a video down for whatever reason. And it makes me think too, is this misinformation policy per se just used as a way to, let's just say, censor people, like in a technical way, in a very lawyer type of way? oh, I can find this little thing, I think whatever, this nature video is fake, for example, so yeah, I'll take it down. Unfortunately, I don't think much is gonna happen. As mentioned, if it's happened to one of their, let's just say, bigger creators like their Mr. Beast or something like that, then I'm sure they'll deal with it right away. It'll get a lot of attention. But here, unfortunately, again, it's just gonna be one of those push it under the rug or something like that. But I just think I have one of the best examples, even if it's gonna be suppressed or whatever. There's no way, man. In terms of here, this bird in nature clip, for example, is quote, misinformation. Give me a break, isn't it? What would you think in general? I'm fascinated to hear your theories, for example. What else could it be logically? And while trying to get answers from YouTube, I did quickly read some news today, and it seemed like a follow-up in terms of that drone scandal about Team Canada using the drone in the Olympics to, quote, spy on Team New Zealand. And it says, Priestman will not return as Canada coach in wake of drone scandal. So apparently, I guess they decided to fire her or let her go. It said, Beth Priestman will not return as head coach of the Canadian women's soccer team following an independent report into the use of drones to spy on an opponent at this year's Paris Olympics, Canada Soccer said on Tuesday. Priestman and 2 other team officials were banned from any soccer-related activity for 1 year by FIFA after New Zealand complained that Canadian staff flew drones over their training sessions before their opening match in Paris. But following an independent review commissioned by Canada Soccer, the national governing body said Priestman and the other 2 individuals currently suspended by FIFA would not return, and a search for a new head coach would commence shortly. Well, I guess that was kind of expected. I'm just surprised it didn't happen faster, aside from having all this drama continuously go on. Apparently this is all fake according to YouTube, I guess, huh? All right, see you guys later.